isn't it? You never know.
And I love Kennedy's too. I told her that.
Yeah, yeah.
Thank you, thank you.
Hello, hello.
Hello,
You know,
hello.
Joylyn,
Hey, Helen.
Yes,
you've never complimented my hair, Joylyn. I just have to say.
I left Greg out there because Greg and I were like in the same place for a long time. I left Greg.
I know,
Hi,
we were together with
everybody.
our hair.
Yeah.
So let's see, who do I see? I see
Hey,
Lisa.
ladies.
Everybody doesn't know Lisa, and we're
Oh.
recording.
Ooh.
Everyone knows Lisa.
So
We love
Lisa,
Lisa.
Lisa is joining the group she'll be operating when we go into breakout rooms. She'll be recording for us and taking minutes. So that way, I felt so bad last time that I had Chris pulling him in and out of his session. So Lisa's going to be doing that for us. Lisa is, for those who are already in the room, Lisa is the administrative assistant to Greg.
Hi,
So,
Stella.
Hi, Greg. Hi, Mike.
Hi,
Mike
Sulfur.
Hi, Christine. Hi, Kennedy. Hi,
Hi,
Helen.
Shalima.
Hi, Mike.
Hey, Miss Lisa.
Tell everybody it's Lisa. We're recording, everyone.
Yeah, get it out of your system, everybody.
Look at the Debbie Downer mic on the Zoom. Don't be a
We're
Debbie
recording,
Downer.
everyone.
Dennis Downer.
We are recording, everyone.
Sorry.
Wow, that's
So I'm trying to see who all is here right now. I see Miss Anderson. I see Miss Olson, Francois Blue, San Filippo. Did I say it right? Dr. Fiorenza, Sheila Harden, Andrea Newman, Michael Sofer, JP, Dr. Weber, Mr. Anderson, Mr. Ammons, Dave Waxler, Linda Parker, Dr. Tabak, and somebody's connecting, so I can't tell who that is yet. Julie Toretta, Lauren Conway, the Great Pumpkin, Cindy Sador.
I know I have to change my background.
Anissa Morlett.
Yes.
Am I missing anybody? Something says adult formation. I don't know who that is. Mr. Davis. There are a couple of people who can't join us tonight. Trying to see who else is here so we could get started. It is 6:30. So we're gonna get this party started, so because we have a lot to share with you tonight. Okay. As everybody knows, I'm Dr. Joylyn Pruitt-Adams. I just want to quickly go over the agenda. I want to thank each and every one of you again for joining us. As other people join in, they'll be brought in. We all know our norms. I am going to ask, because Lisa will be taking minutes, that when you ask your questions after the presentation, that you say your name so we kind of can keep track of who's saying everything. And this is also being recorded. You each should have received a copy of the draft plan. Our hope is that you had an opportunity to glance at it. No, you weren't able to truly absorb it all. But tonight we'll have representatives from the steering committee who will share with you from I always call it 25,000 foot view, some of the key points from their section of the plan. You'll have an opportunity to provide feedback. I'm stressing the fact that this is a draft because we're gathering feedback from our faculty and our staff. We're going to gather feedback from you. We're hoping our students will give us some feedback as we move forward, trying to finalize a plan that we will present to our board on November the 19th as a draft. We will then come back, share with you any new changes that are made, and then be ready to tighten it up for a presentation for the board on December the 3rd. Our next meeting, it says David Strong. Our next meeting with this group will be on the 17th. Next week is election week. And then the week after that is Is that mine? My back? Okay. The week after that, several of us are in a leadership conference, and so we will be sending you stuff to review during that time. Are there any questions of what we're going to do tonight? We're going to hit each portion of the plan, give you the opportunity to ask us questions, and then we'll wrap up. In our wrap up, we're going to follow up on some of the questions we were asked at the last advisory meeting that's tied to the legal guidance. Any questions? Is that feedback coming from me?
Jorlyn, maybe everyone should mute themselves if they're not chatting.
I think so. Thank you, that's better. Okay, so Lisa, if you would click to the hybrid. So while that's coming up, the Illinois State Board of Education, ISB, charged all school districts to develop an in-person, a hybrid, and a remote plan. Could you make that larger, please? And so our plan is broken down into sections. Our plan is developed so that our hope is that at second semester, we'll be able to come back and have in-person instruction. As of today, I don't know where we're going to land, if I'm honest, because today Illinois had the highest number of COVID cases reported. So on Tuesday, we met with members of the medical profession. And I want to thank those of you who met with us and had us really look and begin to think critically about metrics and so forth. One of the questions you asked us, I think one person suggested we also look at Cook County, we look at Oak Park, we look at River Forest, and then identify those key metrics that we were going to focus on. And had we talked with other high schools and other districts. So what we did, a group of us went back and we looked at the information from the Illinois Department of Public Health. And by the way, this evening we received an updated FAQ from IDPH that we will put in the shared drive for the advisory committee and the steering committee. We also received the updated exclusion tree and clarification of the adaptive pause. All those came in about 4:30, but we'll make sure that everybody gets it. So what we did, we sat down and we looked at the metrics and the numbers for River Forest. We looked at the numbers and the metrics for Oak Park. We took information from the Cook County Department of Public Health and the data that they had for Oak Park and River Forest zip codes. We looked at the information we were receiving from the Oak Park Department of Public Health. And then we also looked at the Northwestern website and their data for our points. We then looked at the guidance that we had received from ISB, IDPH, and Cook County Department of Public Health. So we identified 5 metrics. 1, Cook County for cases per 100,000, Cook County for positive cases, the positivity rate, and we looked at Oak Park and River Forest cases per 100,000. We looked at Oak Park and River Forest positivity rates, and then our youth cases. And so what we identified for stage 1, which is full remote, is that all students and teachers would be off-site, that the weekly cases per 100,000 for Cook County would be 100 or more. Combined Oak Park and River Forest would be 50 or more. The weekly positivity rate, Lisa, I can't see the thank you. The weekly positivity rate for Cook County would have to be 8% or more. The combined Oak Park and River Forest positivity rate, this is for full remote, would be 5 or more. And then the weekly new youth cases in Oak Park would be 8 to 10. For stage 2, which is mostly remote, which is where we are right now, where most of our students and teachers are off-site, Identify students and teachers, some teachers and support staff are on site for certain classes, labs, supports, and services. This is where we are currently. That our threshold for guidelines in the weekly cases per 100 for Cook County would be 500 or more per 100,000. Combined Oak Park and River Forest, 35 to 50. The weekly positivity rate, 5 to 8% for Cook County. Combined Oak Park and River Forest, 3 to 5% or less. And the weekly new youth cases in Oak Park, 5 to 8. And if we were in school and the cases in the building, which I can't see for the end of that, there you go. The cases in the building would be 8 to 10. If we had 8 to 10 positive cases, then we would revert back. For the full hybrid, where we would have teachers and up to 25% of our students, based upon our student population, that would be approximately 800 students on site at any given day. So we may have 800 students on Monday, 800 students on Tuesday, and that's dependent upon who opts in or opts out. The threshold guidelines for the weekly cases for full hybrid per 100,000 would be Cook County 50 or fewer, Oak Park and River Forest 35 or fewer. The weekly positivity rate for Cook County should be 5% or less, Oak Park and River Forest 3% or less. Weekly new youth cases 5 or less, and cases in the building 8 or fewer. We would not have to shut totally down if we had 8 or fewer cases in the building. And then for full remote, full in-person, as it was pre-COVID, would be based up on the governor's reopen Illinois for stage 5, which would be either a vaccine or a highly effective treatment that could be available. So when we come, if you have questions, you can either ask them now, but I would ask that you hold it till we go through the remainder of the plan. Lisa, next page.
Dr. Pruitt-Adams, I wanted to add something.
Oh yeah, go ahead. I forgot
Yeah,
something.
no problem. A couple points that the medical subcommittee made, which I want to acknowledge that we heard about is, and we tried to incorporate in this model. One of them is the fact that these thresholds are really not absolute in any way. They're meant to be points where they trigger a conversation between the folks in the high school and the various health organizations, public health organizations. So these are not meant to be absolutes. They're meant to be guideposts for us to have those conversations and make that decision.
And we also said that of the 5 metrics, we would have to meet 3 of those metrics to even start a conversation.
Yes. And then the other point is the fact that although we do want to pay attention to what's happening in the surrounding areas, hence the Cook County numbers, the Oak Park and River Forest numbers, what's really important is what is actually going on in the school. So that's why we tried to incorporate some local cases within the high school in those metrics.
And Dr. Barbados' question was tied to what we said the other day about we would probably never get to 50. Back and we looked at some of our other local high schools and surrounding areas. We were making our metrics comparable to those, and then looking at where we have been as a community. Next slide.
Dr. Pruitt-Adams, there's some questions in the chat. I don't know if you want to field those now, or do we want to?
I was responding to Dr. Barbados. That's
Okay,
what
cool.
I just responded to.
I'm sorry.
Okay, so go back up, Lisa. The first section would be equity. We're going to come back to the communication. So we're going to go to equity, which is part of teaching and learning. Speaking on behalf of equity will be Dr. LeVar Ammons and Ms. Sheila Harden.
Thank you, Dr. Pruitt-Adams. So as we've said before, the consideration of equity is something that's just ingrained in our institution. We'll always talk about racial equity in any of our planning, but specifically now as we think about our return to school, the impact that COVID has on not only our students, but staff, faculty, and so forth. So the idea behind our racial equity work there's two questions. Number one, how will we use our racial equity policy to ensure an equitable return to school? And then secondly, what additional resources will we use to further ensure that equitable return to school? So when we go back to the spring and think about when we were building out or working on the remote learning plan, a practice that we adopted was we used the racial equity policy. One specific section of the policy was the racial equity analysis tool. We used a very a repurposed version of that tool to ask questions to make sure that we keep race on the table for all of the subcommittees as we're making our decisions. So that'll be the same practice as we think about working towards a return to school or a hybrid model. So each one of the subcommittees are purposed with answering these three questions here that are directly from the racial equity analysis tool. And the areas of focus you can see in that first one is we want to know what data or systems that each subcommittee has used and or applied to develop the hybrid plan for second semester. And with that review, we want to think about the impact that it has on racial equity for students as well as any of our stakeholders. And that impact could be positive or negative. We just want folks, again, we want to keep race on the table as we're making our decisions about our return to school or our hybrid plan. Secondly, based on the remote learning plans, what are some of the racially desirable outcomes that we want to see within this plan? So again, we want to think about our data, our systems that we're using, what are the racially desired outcomes, and lastly, we want to be able to look at any of the existing racial disparities that are prevalent from last semester's or last spring's plan, as well as any racial disparities that came up from this semester. And being able to see those racial disparities, we'd be able to, again, be mindful in our planning as it would be specific to each one of the subcommittees. As far as any additional resources, we're currently in the process of looking at a research-based organization that can really offer some comprehensive district level self-assessment. So as we think about all of these questions that are being asked of each individual subcommittee, the idea is to then have one larger tool we can be able to assess the entire district plan in and of itself to really be able to ensure that equitable return at every level. Ms. Harden, did you have anything to add to that?
Thank you. I think it's critical, again, as we talk about equity, to realize that we don't want people filling in a form as if it's a technical task for something that is adaptive long-term work. Equity has been on our minds during this first semester, but during previous years, and will continue to be at every step of where we are in these phases. If we were returning to phase 1 as we all long to be at phase 5, what is happening with our students, with our staff, within our community through a racial equity lens is the goal. And these questions are examples of how we can help keep it on the minds of everybody who is working to make decisions, working to make the implementation of a plan clear, accurate, and friendly. So we really want this to be an adaptive process and not a technical process. And so when we looked at this, we're really not trying to just have it be a checklist, okay, we answer these questions, we're done, but something that you're constantly going back to, thinking about, and of course, offering our resources to help through that with anybody at the building level, district level, or beyond.
Thank you. Did anyone have any questions here? But I did say hold them to the end if you could. Thank you. Next slide should be teaching and learning. There you go. Thank you. You may want to come up so you can show the schedule. And speaking to the teaching and learning aspect is Dr. Lloyd Fiorenza, Ms. Linda Parker, Ms. Francois Blue, Mr. Greg Johnson, and Mr. Christopher Thing.
You want to start, Greg, or would you like me to start?
It's all yours. Why don't you go ahead and take it away, Linda? Sorry.
So as Dr. Pruitt-Adams shared, this was a collaborative effort between Ms. Parker, Ms. Francois Blue, Ms. Kennedy Dixon, Mr. Chris Thien, as well as a number of staff that were on the subcommittee with us. we looked at a number of scheduling options from various schools, just from our own thinking, and we did land ultimately on this particular schedule. I just want to remind that this is our first draft, first attempt at a finalized schedule. This has to go to the staff for feedback and finalization. So this is just our first draft. So as you can see, we tried to maintain the block scheduling with 4 periods a day, an hour a period. The teachers as well as the group felt that this was better for the students. It would ensure more instructional time, fewer transitions throughout the day. Ms. Parker, do you want to speak to why we put advisory after second period?
Yes, thank you so much. So the advisory is now after second period, the way it typically falls in the school day schedule, as opposed to starting at the beginning of the day. We got a lot of feedback through a survey in the thought exchange that spoke to how it felt like an addition to their regular day versus part of the day. In that advisory, we are running mindfulness activities, which is a research-based trauma intervention that helps students to learn how to self-regulate, and it teaches them skills for how to handle stress and challenging situations as they go throughout their day. It's a tier 1 intervention that allows students to kind of give themselves some social emotional skill building and help with those students who can regulate that way. So there will be opening because it's in the middle of the day now. It won't be just mindfulness every day. We also heard that students felt a need to be connected to their teachers and their peers more. So there's going to be an opportunity for there to be different activities that just do connection with students during that time as well. So mindfulness will be there, but it will be also built out to include connection for teachers and students.
So we'll run through the rest of the schedule and then we'll come back and explain the A day, B day, and the rotation. So if you notice, after 4th hour and after 5th hour, there is travel time and lunch time built in for the students that need to leave the high school, as well as a time for students who are at home to have lunch, take a mental break, a body break. And then we move into the next 2 sections of our day. 1:20 to 2:20 is another time period that I will let Ms. Parker address and discuss what will take place during that time.
Thank you, Dr. Fiorenza. So during the hour after the travel lunch, we are building in our student supports. This is a range of activities. It allows our social workers time to run groups. These would be more of a tier 2 nature to help service students who are having more difficulty than what our tier 1 activities are meeting the need for. It also works with counseling activities. There are different meetings that counselors have to have with students to speak about 4-year planning, to work on college applications, and to assist with just the growth and development necessary to choose the right post-secondary plan. They will also be able to do their meetings during this time with students.
And if you don't mind me saying, Linda, just that I just want to underscore that 1:20 to 3:11 parts of the day, just the intention that we really, that time and attention we paid to really wanting to get to students that were in those categories that are in those last categories below, in terms of disengaged students, 2 or more Fs, so that we can make sure that we're targeting students that really need the support. So I wanted to underscore that.
Thank you. And I do think Dr. Fiorenza may be going into that a little bit more as well.
Mm-hmm.
So during, as Ms. Francois Blue indicated, during the 2:20 to 3:11 time is student academic support. And as she indicated, we are looking to ensure that that time is intentional for all students. So as you see, students that have 2 or more Fs, students that are disengaged, but we also included students that may need an AP study table, AP study prep, just a study table, time for tutoring. We're really looking for that specific time frame to be intentional and targeted so that we really get all students the support that they need to be successful during this hybrid model. Ms. Francois Blue, did you want to add anything else?
No, I did just want to highlight those two areas, because I think that we really wanted to make sure that we're looking at student data and how we can capture students' progress or lack thereof before they get to a point where they are showing signs of any regression, and that's students across the board. So I just wanted to highlight that.
So at this time, where we are in the development process of the Bell schedule is looking at rotating students in and out of the A and B day schedule. So we are looking to divide students up in some fashion into what we would call like academies or groups. So groups would have a specific label, the orange group, the blue group. We might use OPRF, some way to designate to students what group they are part of. Once we do that, we'll take the students that have opted in and we will assign them to one of those groups to ensure that we don't go over the 25% or that recommended 700 to 800 in the building at one time. Then students, once in that group, will rotate through the A and B day schedule. That's a place that we're still getting teacher feedback. We're still trying to look at the best way to rotate students, whether that's 2 days in a row, every other day. So at some point, as you see in this, could you go up just a, I guess it's down for you, Lisa. Oh yes. So this is a sample of what we might, what you might see in the Bell schedule. So students could be grouped in that, as I said, OPRF, and go O twice, P, R, and they would rotate with their group throughout the month. In this model, students would get into the building 6 days, which means 2 days in a row, but 6 different times, or for 6 different days. Can scroll so I can see the synchronous and asynchronous. We'll speak to that. So during the experience of hybrid, students will still experience synchronous and asynchronous learning. As we shared in the first plan, the remote plan, synchronous is real time. Students and teachers meet same place, same time, using a particular platform, Google Meet, Zoom. Asynchronous time is when it happens on the student's schedule. So the teacher assigns a video to watch or a particular assignment, and the student has the flexibility to do it as they so choose. So at this time, that's still what's going to take place. We know that students are going to benefit from both of these learning modalities. What we're going to work out, you could keep scrolling, Lisa. Thank you. Perfect. So in our previous model, teachers were to be synchronous 50% of the time up to 100% of the time. So currently we're working with our teachers, our division heads, and the leadership team to really look at and talk about what effective hybrid instruction is going to look like. We're going to be doing some research in the next couple of weeks, looking at other schools to really gain an understanding of how do we teach students in front of us at the same time teaching students in their respective homes. We still believe that synchronous and asynchronous learning is critical in both aspects, but really fleshing that out to what that will look like for all of our students, for our students that are accelerated, for our students that might have some support needs. We definitely want to make sure that we cover that. So that over the next couple of weeks is going to be an area that we are looking at and talking about. Would either of you like to share anything about that component? Would you like me to keep going?
No, I'm good. I was going to hit attendance.
Yes,
next.
Go ahead, Ms. Parker. You can take attendance.
Okay, for student attendance, that policy that we sent out in the midst of the first semester is going to continue. There will be a mandatory attendance for classes each day, and it's going to be taken for in-person and remote students. Students are still expected to have cameras on when they are remote, and the teacher should be able to verify the presence of a student either through seeing them on the camera or through auditory checks for understanding. And students can be marked absent if they are not able, if teachers are not able to confirm their presence on the remote platform. We will continue the suspension of the 12-day absence policy throughout semester 2 in this hybrid policy or plan.
So our grading practices are going to remain exactly as they have been and always are, embodying equity, compassion, and flexibility. So whether or not there's some tweaks to this or not, we always want to embody these 3 things. I think the next one, Ms. Parker, you can take advisory as well.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So again, as I stated when we looked at the schedule, this is just explaining what I put into the conversation when we were looking at the schedule in terms of now being daily for 15 minutes. We did make sure to add into this policy attendance during advisory is mandatory. So it is expected that students will attend advisory in our hybrid model.
Ms. Evans, could you scroll for me, please? Oh, that's just a little bit too far. I need to see academic honesty. Okay, thank you. And Mr. Thiem, you can feel free to jump in if you'd like, but this is a statement that we had previously. Academic honesty is essential. Students have to do their own work, obviously no cheating, not presenting other people's work as their own. We do have a few ways that technology has been helping us to monitor that and support our teachers. If Mr. Thiem is present and would like to share about that.
Sure, yeah. As part of our readiness checklist, both for the remote aspect of remote learning and preparation for hybrid, the same technology platforms that were put into place to have some level of assurance of integrity in what was turned in, as well as proctoring options that were offered, are going to continue through the hybrid learning plan as well, and support to the best of our ability the academic integrity of the learning that's happening there.
Then we have clubs and activities. Mr. Johnson, is there someone to
Yeah,
speak
you
to
know, I
that?
don't know if Mr. Stelzer is in the call right now. And as everybody who's been following information coming from the state at this point knows, as far as sports are concerned, that situation is rather fluid, particularly related to basketball for this coming sports season. And so, regardless of that, and we'll update this plan as soon as we have more concrete information there to share, we are going to continue to have a variety of extracurricular clubs and activities that in a hybrid world will be able to work in the school in a limited capacity. We have begun some of those during these past few weeks already. And so a complete list of all of those will be available on our website, and we will update this site as those become more concrete as well. I don't know that there's anything else here to share at this point.
Yes. So finally, the academic supports that we provide to students to ensure that their needs are met include on-site tutoring. We currently are not offering on-site tutoring, but have included it in this plan in the event that we are able to provide on-site tutoring. We would do that based on data, student data, and it would support specific classes or specific functions. We currently do have remote tutoring. It is a service that's available to all students. We have a specific link and a tutoring center Google Classroom. We have tutoring available in math, science, English, and history, as well as in the final bullet, it's tutoring for executive functioning skills. All of those things are things students can access. And then finally, we do have a resource center, which is an in-school service for recommended students based on data or teacher, counselor, social worker recommendation. And those students are able to come into the building and access certain services and supports. Ms. Francois Blue, do you want to add anything to the academic support?
Nope, not right now. I can wait until we get to the part about special ed.
Perfect, thank you. And now I think Ms. Parker is going to talk about the next piece.
Thank you. So if you, thank you, just continue to scroll up, Lisa. Until,
You have approximately 3 minutes
okay,
left for
thank you.
session. Thank you.
Lisa, come down a little bit just so I can see part of that paragraph up at the top. I wanted to make sure that everyone understood that we heard loud and clear in terms of students reporting to us that they just don't feel connected in this environment. It's very hard when we're behind screens to make individuals feel connected to their peers and connected to their teachers the way we do within the building. And so what we've determined from this first semester is that we have to do a little bit more to try to embed some purposeful and intentional activities within even the classroom to make sure students feel connected. Teachers will do this a variety of ways, but the chart that you see when you look in this plan is actually the chart we used from last year with, last semester with the activities. We are in the process of revising this for the second semester for our hybrid plan, because some classes will start over again. There will be new semester 2 classes with teachers having new students, but there are also year-long classes where teachers will continue with their same students. We want to make sure that there are activities and a whole variety that teachers can select from to embed some connecting within the curriculum as they're working in their classrooms. So expect this chart to be a little different. There is a committee that's working on developing even more activities to fit in here, but that is the purpose for this chart, and those are where those activities will appear. That's all.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Would you scroll, Lisa? Keep going. Uh-oh, something just happened on my screen. So we're in the health and safety protocols. So I'm going to now turn this over to the following people. Ron Anderson, Cindy Sador, Julie Toretta, David Waxler, Mike Perkowski. Did I miss anybody?
Well, I think you missed me.
Oh, I'm sorry. Roxanne, I'm sorry. The COVID management health and safety protocols. Dr. Roxanne Sanders. I am so sorry.
Yeah, so really the update to this plan was done by Julie Toretta and me, and I think the folks at Jeanette will jump in for the operations part. But this one specifically, what we did, Julie and I, we took the previous safety protocol that existed for employees and the safety management plan for students that Julie developed, and we merged the two together. So what you see on the screen now is first we described what are the typical symptoms of COVID-19, and then the protocol goes into several different parts. The first one is prior to entering the building. We updated it to include the new self-certification that everybody who comes into the building will be required to complete before coming into the building. We've shared with you before that we're looking at several different vendors. We made our choice. The vendor is Qualtrics. So we will be calling, we won't be using that name, we'll be just calling it District Health Self-Certification app. While somebody is entering the building, when people take self-certification, it will prompt them if they have any symptoms that would require them to stay home. And the app also allows us to check at the door who has completed it. So the next section is entering the building. Everybody who is entering the building would need to show at the entrance that they have completed the self-certification. And our campus safety employees will be able to see it right away on their device that the person has gone through the self-certification. They will still need to undergo a temperature check. And the request is that everybody goes directly to the assigned classroom or work area to minimize any movement within the building. The next section is safety requirements while in the building. That hasn't changed really. It's you need to wear a mask, you need to maintain social distancing and wash hands frequently. And then finally, you need to see the nurse if not feeling well. There is a section below it that talks about the isolation room and what to expect both for employees and for students. And that would be for employees, it would be if somebody is not able to drive and they are waiting for somebody to pick them up. And students will never be left alone in the isolation room. If you can please scroll. Okay. It also goes into cleaning, and I'm sure the operations team will talk a lot more, but we wanted to ensure everybody that all surfaces will be disinfected daily. The next portion is management of positive COVID-19 tests. And Julie, if you don't mind going over those.
Sure, if you could just scroll a little bit, please, Lisa. So this was, this section here discusses what we're going to do and what the steps are that we're going to take in the event that we have a positive COVID-19 test in the building, whether it be a staff person or a student. All of this was already pre-screened by Mike Charlie over at the health department, and he approved everything. It discusses what we're going to do, how we're going to communicate, as well as what the requirements are for returning back to work and or school. Lisa, if you could just scroll a little bit more, please, hon. Keep going, keep going. Sorry, just keep going. It's not updating on my screen very quickly. And then there's a section that discusses returning to work after illness or after a COVID-19 exposure. This, we also included as part of the plan, the most recent, which actually needs to, that needs to change. The most recent interim exclusion guidance chart, which just changed again on the 27th. So we'll have to update that from the Illinois Department of Public Health so that people can see it like we see it and like we've been memorizing it in the chart form on how we determine who we exclude, why we exclude, how long we exclude, and what the requirements are to return to the building. I think that's the end of our section, Roxana.
Yeah, it just lists testing sites, location in Illinois.
Oh, right. Yeah, the testing sites are under that.
Yeah.
Right.
So the next section is the operations issues, and now it's turned over to Ron Anderson, Cindy Sidor, Mike Perkowski, Carolyn Gus, Dave Watsler, Julie Toretta, and Jonathan Stelzer. Did I leave out anybody who's a part of that group? Jeff Bergman and Fred Pruse. Mr. Anderson, you're muted. Mr. Sidor, you're muted.
You hit everybody. All right, school arrival protocols. The students will, as Roxana said, use the district health self-certification app each day before arriving to school. The students will use 4 entrances that we named off that's inside of the plan, and the entrances will have social distancing marks outside, along with security being available to help with the safety protocols to make sure they're followed through the entry of the building. Dave, can you touch a little bit more on the entrance?
Yeah, so in addition, yes, in addition to checking to verify that they've gotten the green light to get in the building, we're also going to have temperature check machines located at each entrance and additional support staff to assist with social distancing inside and outside as students are coming into the building and as they're exiting as well. So as they show us their scanned Security will interact with the students, make sure they have masks. We'll have extra PPEs available for students. We'll have extra gloves and obviously masks if they choose to. If they don't have their own or they forgot theirs, we'll have extra upon arrival.
The classroom capacity will be limited based off the square footage. So the desks will be separated and marked so that the two students can properly social distance within the classroom. And then the air ventilation, we have upgraded our filtration system to the MERV 13 filters. And those classrooms that don't have MERV 13 filters, we will purchase portable air filtration systems for those rooms. And we found systems that are quiet, more quiet than so it won't be disruptive in the classrooms.
So can I interrupt you for a quick second? There's we've been asked by many about, our building being so large, yet the room capacity does not seem to equate when you say 1 million square foot building. Could you just speak in a little detail about potential classroom capacity, like on the average?
Well, you have 1 million square foot building, but the classrooms they vary in size. So some of our classrooms will have the capacity of 12, some will have the capacity of 8, 7. It all depends on the square footage of that certain classroom. Like home economics, some of those classrooms could go from 8 to 12 people, but a smaller math classroom could be 12 people, 6 people. It all depends on the square footage of that classroom in certain parts of the building.
Thank you.
Passing periods. Dave, could you talk about passing periods?
Yeah, so campus safety is asking for all administrators, buildings and grounds, campus safety teachers, food service, bookstore, counselors, HR, everybody's going to have to pitch in during passing periods. So once the bell announces that the students go to the next classroom, that we're all working together as a team to make sure that students aren't congregating, aren't spending too much time in the hallways. Also, students will not be able to use their lockers because that would block up the one-ways that we've set up. And it's just going to be a team effort for everybody to pitch in when students are going from classroom to classroom.
The restrooms and hallways will be monitored by security, and some of the bathrooms will be locked so that while we're cleaning bathrooms, we can unlock the other ones. And then when we lock those back, we clean the other ones so that you have the bathrooms continuously getting disinfected and sanitized. Also, the lunchroom people would help out monitoring the bathrooms when able. We spoke about that as well. School dismissal, we would use the same doors as they would during the building evacuation, because you don't want to assign students doors that's across from where they are or way across to another building. They would go to the closest exit to their classroom. Cleaning and sanitizing. The students would disinfect their desk area before leaving the classrooms, and the ones coming in would disinfect it again when they come into the classroom. The buildings and grounds will continue to clean and disinfect all the common areas multiple times a day. Door handles, all touch spots. They'll continue to do those. We'll have detailed cleaning procedures, which are linked into the document to show a detail of exactly how we would be cleaning and sanitizing the rooms, along with safety data sheets, so you know what's inside of the product, just in case there's any allergic reactions. Could you go over safety drills, Dave?
Could I stop for a minute? There's a section where we had talked about where we said all staff, including safety, buildings and grounds, deans, administrators, food service, bookstore, counselors, will support students in the passing period. I think it was indicated that teachers would be doing that. However, the teachers are at their doors greeting their students, so they're not able to monitor the halls. I just want to clean that up.
Well, they would just be monitoring the hall in front of their door.
I just wanted to clean up the language. That's all.
Okay.
Yeah. Understood. Sorry about that.
Dave, could you touch the the safety drills?
Sure. Lisa, can you go down a little bit to the drills? So I created this protocol for drills, and essentially, you know, drills need this, based on this, the state and the mandates, we're required to have drills. So we just have to take additional precautions. So I've created a variety of bullet points when we have those drills to work with the teachers, work with the faculty and staff, but also keep in mind that when a threat happens, it doesn't have a date and it doesn't have a time. So I want everybody to be cognizant of how many students are in the building, continue social distancing, going down the existing exits, following the existing protocols, but also just keep in mind social distancing, making sure the teachers obviously have extra masks and gloves in their spaces, additional PPEs, have hand sanitizers. So all of these things will assist. With the smaller amount of students in the building, it will assist us and campus safety in the building administration with being able to conduct the drills more safely because we don't have as many students. It's a lot easier to conduct drills with 800 students or 500 students than 3,500 students. So taking that into consideration, we do not believe that there's going to be any issues in regards to that because it's just going to be smaller groups throughout the building. We also ask that the drills don't immediately happen. We would want everybody to get back into the rhythm of being in the building before we discuss it and have some pre-drills done as well.
Mike P, can you go for food service?
Sure. We are looking to have our cafeterias open in the morning for those students that might be there earlier than you're allowing them to go up to the classroom. And we would only allow 50 in each cafeteria. We would mark tables with white placemats so they would be sitting socially distancing. They would be able to get food and it would be on a pre-order system. We are using that pre-order system now so the students know that. There'll be no lunch in the building, but we still will do distribution of a 7-day breakfast and lunch weekly pickup. So that will not change.
Cindy, can you cover transportation? Cindy, are you there?
I have to unmute. Sorry about that. So for transportation, what we have contractual outside services. And with that, the bus drivers and monitors must undergo symptom and temperature checks before the start of each workday. Drivers and monitors who become ill during the route should contact their supervisor and then follow return to work school IDPH guidelines. You have drivers, monitors, and students must wear approved appropriate face coverings at all times. Windows should be kept open to increase the ventilation whenever possible. Students should be seated with one child per row on each side of the vehicle. Students who live in the same household may sit next to one another, but no more than 3 students per seat. Before boarding the vehicle, students must show evidence of self-certification. If a student is unable to do so or is experiencing symptoms, the student will not be permitted to board the vehicle. They occupy, when they start to get on the bus, they occupy the back rows first to minimize contact as students move down the aisle. When exiting the vehicle, students from the front exit first. To physical distancing, students should comply with the visual guides that are on the bus, such as floor decals, colored tape, or signage. Parents shall notify the high school if their child is showing any symptoms of COVID. The director of transportation will notify the transportation provider. The transportation provider shall notify parents of any students who rode on that route, and the high school will notify the health official of any reported positive case of COVID-19.
And we'll pass our section on. Financial consideration.
Did you want to speak to financial consideration?
Oh, sure. So right now, at this point, the district has purchased $839,000 in COVID-related services and supplies. We anticipate that the district will spend approximately $2 million, which we put on the contingency line of the budget. The other thing is we also have 2 grants. One is CARES Act, which we received $171,000, but that also has to be shared with Fenwick and Trinity, giving our district approximately $80,000. And then also to FEMA, we had just turned in our FEMA for some of the reimbursement, but we have until January 20th to actually submit at this point. And yay to us, because hand off to Ron here, we got all green marks, which FEMA said that was something that they have not seen too many people be able to accomplish. Did I freeze? Did I freeze?
Nope, you're good.
Did I freeze?
No, we can hear you.
Oh, okay. I was going to say, everybody froze on me. So.
Oh, I see. I think we're good for technical support with Chris at this point. Is that right?
I could give a really brief synopsis of any changes that are different from the remote learning. Self-certification, of course, we're talking about that along with other areas of support that we are involved with in various aspects of the plan. Remote phone functionality, I know, is one that is high on many people's minds. We have identified and vetted a solution. We're going through the process of establishing what it's going to take to bring that on board. But we have tested it and it works, and it integrates into our phone system. So it is a mirror remotely of the phone that is allocated to people in their offices. We've just restructured where we need to in terms of support to have a combination of physically present as well as remote support ongoing into the hybrid process, with as much physical distancing as possible. So continued use of lockers and of remote control in order to provide the support that we normally would do in person, while also adding a safe distance, social distance aspect of support to both the student and teacher support help desks.
Okay. I think that's all. So Lisa, you could go back to the agenda on the screen. Can everyone hear me?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, so there seems to be a lot of questions in the chat about the rate, about the metrics we used, and so I'm going to attempt to go through it again. There's some questions, and one person asked, was this the metrics that we discussed in our meeting? We did talk about looking at Cook County in our meeting. We also talked about looking at Oak Park and River Forest and using the Northwestern site. When we left the meeting, we talked about an 8% positivity rate. And then we also talked about 140 per 100,000 cases. It was also suggested that we look at what other schools were doing and so forth. So yesterday after the meeting, we went through the information we received from where we were at the medical professionals, where we kind of landed on. We looked at Nutrier's sampling and data. We reached out to our feeder schools, D90, and looked at their metrics. And we also reached out to D97 and got their metrics as well. When we went into the site for and I'm pulling this from my memory, when we went into the site for Northwestern, we were at about a 4.6 positivity rate now. And then I know in the meeting the other day it was saying we would never reach the 50 per household. As we started looking at where we were as a district and we looked at Cook County, we tried to come to a median that would, of the 5 metrics, if we hit 3 of those metrics points, and we also went back and looked at the Cook County metrics that are on our website of what is considered moderate or median, what is considered substantial, and what is considered at risk. And in our conversation, tried to look at our demographic and where we were when we talked about back in August, where we were and where we are right now. And that's how we kind of landed on the metrics that we have. As I said, this is a draft. We did find, while we were in this presentation, Mr. Carriacho found an error in our chart that we have that was not correct. I don't know if Greg or Mr. Carriacho want to add to that. We can follow up. Like I said, this is a draft for feedback. But we also talked about where we've been and where we would be right now relative to our mostly remote, which is the current process we're in. Greg or Mike, did you want to add to our discussion at all?
No, I don't think so. Although you said that Mike found something that was
something that said there was something in here that was an error in what we had in our chart that was not correct. That may have thrown, it really may have thrown everything else off.
So Mike, could you
Yeah, I'm not sure what you're referring to. I did.
You said, this is what I thought you said, that we never talked about, we would never return back to 50 cases per 100,000 cases.
Yeah, we were actually at that point. And a comment that was made in the with the medical group that was Tuesday was that we really wanted to, we want to go back to where we were comfortable. Would we have been comfortable at that point? So we sort of look back at where we were and would we have been comfortable at that point, and that's sort of where we use that as sort of our baseline number. That was my point, Dr. Pruitt-Adams.
Oh, okay. So we're open for questions now. We were trying to answer the question that was in the chat. I don't see anybody. I'm sure somebody has questions about anything in the plan, even if it's the metrics. This is where we need your feedback, and everybody's muted, so.
I have a quick question. So as a student, I'm taking mostly AP and honors courses right now, and most of my classes are 20 to 30 students. If you can only fit 7-ish students in a classroom, how is a teacher supposed to teach the other 20 is kind of my question.
Yeah, so we've had, and other people may want to chime in on this, but that is right at the heart of the challenge of a hybrid teaching model. And so while there are students who are in the class, physically in the class, there will be students remotely who will be needing to get the exact same content that's being delivered to those students who are in-house. And so I think the simplest way to describe it is that in many ways, the lesson that's delivered is going to be very similar in structure to what is currently happening in a remote setting, with the difference that there are 7 kids who can get the benefit of having a little bit more direct, immediate interaction and contact with the teacher and with one another remotely from the safe distance during that time. So yeah, I hope that answers that question to the best that we can at this point. Does that make sense, Amelia?
Yes, but I do have a follow-up. Is there research or, I don't know, like information out there that shows that there is just a little bit more of an advantage to have just such a small number of students in a classroom with such a large risk for getting sick. Because then that kind of goes into the whole, like, of course, immunocompromised students cannot go to school. They will not be able to be a part of those groups who go to school. So what about those students? Like, who is really getting the benefit here?
Yeah, it's a fabulous question. There's a lot of different ways to approach that, I think, when you're talking about what the research is telling us on this. And I think the most direct answer is that, and there isn't research about this type of a hybrid learning plan out there specifically, right? I mean, this is novel for everybody. There is a lot of research out there, of course, that students learn better. We all learn better. Human beings learn better when we fully recognize that learning is a social act, and to the to whatever extent that we can bring folks in the social space for learning to better. But we do have to be cognizant of the fact that the extent to which a hybrid learning model with 7 kids in class or whatever that is, right, depending on the class structure, is, you know, fully social the way that a regular classroom learning environment is during a regular school year is not real, right? I mean, that's not exactly what's going to be happening in this. So your question ended with, so who benefits from this? I think you could make a strong argument that there is a limited benefit that could be important, really more important for some kids than another, depending on how much they may be struggling socially to engage in learning from a completely remote environment. There certainly could be a benefit for those kids being in the building, being able to see their peers, ask questions in the more relaxed environment across a classroom, right? Even with that distance in place. And even with that distance in place, when in whatever space allowed, being allowed to do that with their teacher too, in a physical environment. You'll note that also the schedule that we have allows for, we're hoping to allow for at the end of the day, some sort of study tables for our students. And there is absolutely going to be benefit for that type of environment, of course, stressing the social distancing there. So, but you're right, this is not a panacea. The hybrid model comes with questions, it comes with challenges, and it's gonna be hard. And it's not going to address all of the learning needs that are presenting themselves in our pandemic right now. There's no way it's going to address all of those.
You know, if I could, I'd very much like to ask a question, if I could. Stephen Weber, I took part in the medical call the other day, and I think really it's a two-part question. One is, are the measures that we see in front of us right now on this slide more or less that which was originally proposed as a starting point from the state, city, and at the beginning of our call on Tuesday? Because I'm not pretending to speak for the entire medical group, but there seemed to be a sense to me in that group that we ought to push a little bit so that we could hope to get the kids back to school, particularly with the other thoughtfulness of the plans and the measures put in place. So did we ever ultimately, with what we see right now, did we move from what the state, city, and other bodies are saying? And then the second question is, will we come back to revisit the issue of testing, which there might have been less consensus on the other night, but there was still an active question.
So I'm going to try to answer both your questions. And then I know Ms. Harden wanted to say something. We did, our metrics, we didn't change much from what IDPH guidance said to us and what we were looking at in our Northwestern numbers. We realized, based looking on the chat, and that the significant difference between what we had in our meeting. And so we are going to, we would like to meet again with the professionals, share with you in a group how we got to the point that we got to, and then maybe between us explaining to you how we got to that point, we can come up with a happy medium for the metrics. But this is a draft, okay? I also wanted to, there was another question in here. So if the medical group is agreeing to it, because we heard you, and looking at the chat, I think you feel like your input fell on deaf ears. It did not. And so, as I said, we are willing we're kind of texting back and forth from the, from the team. And so we're willing to sit and meet with you again. As I said, walk through the process we used to get to this point, and maybe collectively we can come to a place of understanding. Ms. Harden, I know you wanted to respond. I think Ms. Olson has her hand up as well, and Ms. Anderson. So Ms. Harden had her hand up, then we'll go to Ms. Olson and Ms. Anderson.
Thanks, Dr. Pruitt-Adams. I just wanted to respond to Amelia's questions, which I thought were great, and just say as an AP teacher and as a teacher, she's brought up some excellent points, and I think the communication that we have with our students is going to, and parents and community, about the hybrid model, because the fact of the matter is, if I have 6 kids in front of me and 22 at home, I have to do my best for all of them at the same time, Amelia. And I also will have to recognize that I would be now teaching on a Zoom with a mask on. My students in class will still be on Zoom because they need to be a part of the conversation, and I want the people on Zoom to hear their great comments. So there's a lot of navigating. There's not a perfect answer, and there's certainly other classes are going to be able to navigate that perhaps differently. So it'll depend somewhat on the classes, and it's going to be something that we will, as again, everybody has said, this is a draft plan. We'll have to kind of really help you and everybody know what we're going to be expecting, because we can't just go back, as Dr. Pruitt-Adams and Mr. Johnson have said, the socialization, the in-person won't be the same. So those are good questions, and I hope that you and all the other students will continue to ask really good questions. That'll help us communicate as we move forward. So thank you.
Thank you. I only answered one part of Dr. Weber's question. I think the other question you had was about testing. Are we going to talk about that? We did reach out to legal. That's going to come in later, because we talked about that. And those things, the process for using the screeners. So we will get to that. That's later. And Mike is going to make sure that we have time to go through those legal questions. But for the group, we are looking at a screener. It's our understanding that the Bionex Now was not the most sensitive. We have received the contract for the, this one out of my head, the saliva screening. Based up on our schedule, we would not be able to screen twice a week. If the proposed schedule that we have for students is the one that is the final draft, there would be no way, based upon the time the kids would be in the building, that they could be screened twice a week. However, we would be screening at least 3 days a week a group of students. If it's O students on Monday, P students on Wednesday, R students on Friday. This is a surveillance. As we said, it is not diagnostic. We just received the contract back. Myself, Board President Spivey, are going to meet with our legal counsel. There are some components of the screener that have to be negotiated legally as well. But we are looking at we're going to also try to do a survey to see how many of our families and our staff would opt in to be screened in order to make sure that it's worth the money that we would have to invest in it. Did that help, Dr. Weber? Okay, Ms. Olson?
Sure. I guess at a high level, with any plan, the devil is always in the details, and the logistics of implementation. Will there be, I know this plan is a draft and it's very high level. Will there be additional conversations about the actual logistics, for example, of getting kids in the door? If we have 4 entrances, 150 kids, 30 seconds a kid, we're talking like an hour and 15 minutes to get them through the line, right? So, will there be a conversation later into saying, how exactly that looks? Because I don't want to dive too much into it now, but there's just a couple of little things like that, it sounds good, but when you look at what it actually looks like for implementation, there could be additional challenges there, right?
Ms. Olson, you're on the facilities group?
Yes, operations facilities, yeah.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons that I was glad you chose to be on that group, because I thought maybe you could help us to discern, a timely way. As you heard Mr. speak about the doors that will be identified, we believe that the app will reduce time, as well as we have the temperature checks that take approximately 3 seconds. Right now, we have those already in place. But getting kids in, we realize some may come in early, as was indicated, and supervising them. So that the logistical piece is where I think you'd be really helpful.
Yeah,
and
I'm happy to have and it doesn't need to be in this format, but happy to dive into some of that, because there's a few little things that I think are great, but they'll have to be implemented, to be successful. The other thing, and again, this is really detail-ish, but in the proposed schedule, I noticed that we have office hours and then the student academic supports. And I wonder if the kids are being dismissed at 12, whatever, there's a 2-hour gap before those academic support times happen. And I'm wondering if you lose kids, right, who go home and just don't make it back. And is there, in terms of who we think would take advantage of these different things and who would service the most students, is there any advantage to flip-flopping academic support and then doing office hours at the end of the day to try and keep as many kids as close to campus as possible and get them back in the doors?
Yeah.
Just another high level thought.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Misty. We have gotten some internal questions about that as well, and I see Lori just popping in there. Lori, you want to take that?
I just wanted to say that we did consider that. Ms. Parker can explain why we wanted probably the SEL portion first and that academic piece last. In addition, I just will let you know that we are being intentional. So we may have some students that we know struggle with attendance or struggle with executive functioning skills that we may actually have stay in the building. So there is a possibility that we can do one or the other. And by placing that SEL piece in between the break and the academic support, that allows us some time to let those students who might need that emotional support as well as academic support get both and remain in the building.
Gotcha. All right.
I don't know if Ms. Parker wants to add.
Yeah, I was going to just thank you so much, Dr. Fiorenza. That's exactly correct. Not to mention, we had some concern about how many could actually stay in the building versus how many need to get home. And if the travel home extended past the 120, it put the kid who was trying to get home really fast in a bad position. So we were just trying to make sure we had something to offer for each and had some space in time to allow them to get back home so that they can be back virtual on their devices and eat.
Okay, that was Ms. Olson. We also had, what did she tell me? Ms. Anderson. Then we have a couple of more questions, and we also want to cover with you the legal questions. And we have this, okay, so we have 5 more minutes in this question section. Ms. Anderson, you had a question?
Yeah, I certainly appreciate the opportunity to come back together as a smaller group and discuss the metrics. I think for the good of the bigger group that's on tonight, I think there is collective concern specifically about the weekly cases per 100,000. I don't know if Mike Charlie can comment, but when I look back on the IDPH website, we haven't been at 50 or fewer cases since last July 5th. And I think with the way that COVID is heading, and we certainly want to do it safest but I also, you want to also be realistic to what's coming in a couple of months. And I do feel that keeping it at 50 or fewer or 35 or fewer for the zip codes could be too restrictive. And I don't see how coming back second semester would be even, no pun intended, but remotely possible.
Thank you. Mike, did you want to add into that?
Well, I have, in regards to data, and I can go back all the way to the beginning, and we have been, in regards to cases per 100,000, 7-day rolling average. I'm just looking at this. So since the like the maybe 20th case, we've been pretty much over 50. We were over 50 up from, okay, hold on. I'm going to try to make this for the group. I got to look at this and try to have it make sense without you looking at my screen. So basically we were over 50 from March 30th through May 26th. And then they sort of closed down the state, right? So then we started going down. So we were below 50 from May 26th through about July 21st. And then pretty much since July 21st, except for a few days, we've been mostly over 50. And then just recently, we've sort of seen this significant increase where over the last week or so, we've been between 115 and 138. So I know that's a lot of data, and you're not looking at my screen, but sort of that paints a picture in regards to Oak Park. Oak Park data, not the county. The county data, I mean, the county data, I have going back to as far as August 8th, and that was at 99 on August 8th, and the lowest it's been since then is 77 in Cook County, so.
Thanks, Mike.
Okay.
Dr. I'm trying to see who else had a statement in here. Oh, there's a question from Dr. Trebek that says, was the option of bringing in each group for a full week and rotating each week discussed versus the 2 days in a row? This would allow the ability to test at the start and end of the week, thus equating to twice a week. Kids wouldn't get a full week. It would get a full week of in-person, more consistency for families, deep cleaning between groups only once.
Hi, do you understand that question? Basically, could you do, if you're dividing the kids into groups of 4, could you do a full week and everybody just gets 1 week a month?
Froze.
Yeah, no.
We could hear.
Yeah, I got it here. So the idea is that basically each kid gets 1 week per month, but it's a week straight, Monday through Friday.
Yeah, on Monday through Thursday, you deep clean Friday for the next group coming in. You can test twice a week, beginning of the week, at the end of the week. If quarantines need to happen, then they're off to quarantine anyway. So at least you're not shutting down, going up. You know what I mean?
It's worth considering. Lori, Linda, you may want to chime in on this too. We've had, as you can imagine, since we've kind of put this out and had to let people take a look at it, we've had a lot of suggestions like that, right? That question one way or the other. And so the dynamics are balancing between something like you're describing, which is perhaps a little bit more efficient for cleaning, right? And that's what I hear you arguing for, versus trying to get something that's going to be a little bit more of a consistent rotation in a smaller amount of time for our kids. So our kids aren't waiting 3 weeks, right, before they're rotated back in. And so we're trying to find that sweet spot between those two. And I won't say at this point, and I think Dr. Fiorenza did a really nice job when she first presented this, of saying that what we're looking at right now is this double, 2 days in a row thing is kind of a mash between those two extremes, right? The kind of trying to find some sort of a sweet spot. But that's still in flux. We're still getting a ton of feedback on that. So what you're naming is right there in the heart of the debate, in the conversation we're having.
And Greg, I would just add, with the cleaning aspect, given that COVID and the nature of it is a day-to-day thing, because if those students go out and, whatever, you still have to do the cleaning daily to prepare for the group, whichever group comes in the next day.
Okay.
Okay.
But thanks for the question, though.
Yeah, and we can add it to the discussion for sure.
So another question, we're gonna take one more question and then we go to the legal. You guys know how to email me with your other questions. I wanna say this is a great time for the feedback that you've given us. Know that we will take it all into consideration. One more was that given the limited time in the building for the hybrid, the limited benefits being in class and the challenging daily logistics, do we foresee most of our students opting to stay at home?
Dr. Pruitt-Adams, I think I can speak to just a little bit of that. I think it's really too difficult to know that. I definitely think we will need to survey our families to get that information. It's not a good idea to speculate because I think everybody has a different reason right now for wanting to be either remote or in person. So once we do that survey of the families, we will have a better idea.
Yes, this was Linda Francis that had said that. I think we also do have some other forms of data that may not be that straight explicit data, but that, you know, just examples of what we're seeing now. But just when the young lady, I've forgotten who, had really asked the question about who benefits. And when when you hear the description of what the class will be like, I think both students and parents need to have a really clear understanding that yes, you will be in the building. Yes, you may be in a classroom with 6 other kids, but you're still staring at a screen and your teacher who's in the room is teaching you via Zoom, not directly. And so the benefits that people are hoping to get out of coming into the building, I'm not seeing how that is being addressed. And that's not a dig. I mean, just as I look at this logistically, and with my systems engineering background, I don't see how it is possible to deliver on what most folks would want to have their kids experience in person. And you know, and I'm not saying it to you know, to halt the work, but it almost feels like we are going through the motions because we've been told we have to. But at some point, realism has to come into play.
Thank you for that. So on that, we're going to close the question period. As I said, you can always email us. We have captured everything that's in the chat, and we've recorded this meeting so we can go back and revisit the different levels of feedback and suggestions. I do want to go to, because in the last advisory meeting, we were asked a lot of questions about legal and what that would look like. So Lisa, if you could click on the responses to the legal questions we received from the group. Can you make it a little bit bigger? I have really old eyes. Just a bit bigger. Or else I can just put my head in the screen. That's okay too. Maybe 125. Thank you. Okay, so we were asked a question about testing. I think the medical group asked if we could just require all staff and/or students to do COVID testing or screening. What we were told with regards to student, it is a right of the students to be able to attend school if their parents refuse to allow them to be tested. And so we cannot put students through a test unless we have some proof or suspect that he or she may have COVID. The district can mandate screenings and tests for sports and extracurricular activities. But there is no state law at this point that requires COVID testing for anyone. There's actually some CDC guidance on not to screen. So legal indicated they were going to send that information to us. We were also told with regards to teachers and the saliva testing or even the nasal screening, that we would need to negotiate the following things if we were going to screen. The frequency of the screening, the impact of the screening, the confidentiality of that information, how we would store it, as well as the impact of a false positive or even a false negative. And if that employee then had to take a leave of absence, what would that look like based upon COVID? And so those are things we would have to do. We also asked, what was the liability tied to us having students clean their desks? As you recall, it came up last week about students cleaning. It even came up in our steering committee. And so we were told that some districts do have students clean their desks. What they do is they have the students clean, the incoming students clean the desk. And what we suggested is possibly, as a student is leaving, have him or her wipe their desk down with the disinfectant wipes, and then as another group comes in, they wipe it down again so that we know that it's clean, because we could see some students coming in and say, I want to wipe that desk off, somebody else's germs are on there. But legally we can do that. But we do have to realize that the unions may have some pushback. Could you scroll up some, Lisa? We also asked, okay, no, you went too far. Oh, no, you didn't, that's okay. We also asked, is there any legal liability if as a district that we decided to, we had people testing and someone tested positive, then they went to their doctor and they tested negative. And we were told, no, there's no legal liability if we had gone through the negotiation process and was clear on what would happen with impact, confidentiality of information, and so forth. We also asked, because of the freedom, the Privacy Act for our students and our staff, about what would we do with those screeners and the self-certification data that we would use? What's the rules for destruction? For students, this information would be part of a student record, and the district would be required to keep it for 7 years after they've graduated or leave for any other reason. With regards to staff, the information does not have to be kept in the employee file, but we should keep it in alignment with our normal employee record processes. We also talked about what happens if there's a physical event and that's happening, like a kid who may have a medical condition or so forth. And as long as the person has on the appropriate PPEs and the staff can assess the situation, then that child can be assisted. But we have to really look at the signs. People's stuff is coming up in the chat. I'm sorry, it's distracting me. That there's a reasonable fear of COVID. And so if that person has a reasonable fear that he or she may be in danger, or they put the child in danger, then we are not at risk of liability. If there's Greg, you want to add anything to what I've said so far? You're muted.
Yeah, thanks. I do. The notes that we have in here after this point are some internal conversations actually we were having about how we will handle a variety of incidents that are common for a school, fighting, if there's a kid who gets sick in a classroom, and so on and so forth. And the general message for the questions that follow after this is that at no point will we ever be in the situation of requiring a staff member, whether a teacher, security, building and ground staff, we will never require them to put themselves in harm's way. And so, and that's even more the case when we are in a COVID situation. And so we have to be, that's another thing that's very much tied to what Linda Francis said very well earlier in this conversation, reiterating the point that the type of in-school experience our kids are going to have is very different. And that's going to cause us as a school district to be a little bit more strict about unwanted contact, fighting or otherwise, of any type, than we might otherwise be, saying that would be grounds for necessary exclusion from the hybrid environment, because the risks are just so much greater in a COVID situation. So the rest of these questions are designed to give us guidance on that type of thing.
Yeah, I agree with you. I do want to go up to the question on opt-in, opt-out, but Lisa, you can go back to the agenda now. One of the questions, I think it was Misty Olson, you can go to the agenda, Lisa, who asked a question about the opt-in, opt-out, sending out an opt-in, opt-out prior to the plan, and then after the parents have seen the plan. And so legal did send us a draft opt-in, opt-out. Karen Sullivan, who's not with us tonight, has adjusted that. So that should be going out soon to parents just trying to get a gauge on staffing needs and so forth, and the number of students who we will plan on. And then once the plan is public, because it is draft and you guys have seen it, but it's not been seen by the public. It won't be seen totally by the public until the 19th. And then once parents have seen it, giving them another chance to opt in or opt out. So I did want you to know that we've looked into that, and that is something we will be doing. I do want to take time now to wrap up because we're over time. We have captured the chat, and so we will be addressing those questions in the chat. To the medical group, we're going to reach out and arrange a time for you to meet with us again. What I will probably do is also invite the members of the medical work group so that you can be a part of that conversation as well. We will go through the process that we use to come up with the metrics that we have. And so if there are no questions of me tonight, it is 8:03. Please send us any questions that you have that are lingering or that come up after you reflected, had a really good opportunity to go through the plan. Please send those to us. As I said again, this is a draft, and that's one of the reasons why you guys are here, to share some insight with us. So thank you all very much. Be safe, and we will see you again on the 17th. Bye-bye. The medical group will see you before that.
Okay, bye now.
Bye-bye. Greg, Mike, Lisa, could you stay, please? Did Greg check out already? Did Mike check out?